and now fortified with coffee. The difference was noticeable as soon as he set foot into the village. The empty houses showed distinct signs of habitation, including expensive-looking horses tied to the makeshift rails. As he strode down the dusty lane, the corner of his eye, he could see eyes peering out over window ledges. Did they think that he couldn't see the tops of their heads? Blazes, he could hear them whispering from here. But if he noticed them, he'd have to do something about them, and that would completely ruin the mystique. Either it would be too terrifying and all the tourists would flee, or it would be insufficiently terrifying and thus disappointing, and all the tourists would flee. He did his best to stroll with his nose in the air, his best "don't mess with me" face plastered on, hoping that it would be enough. A few children sighted him from down the road and raced off towards the square. By the time he arrived, various guests had hidden themselves poorly behind the halfway built booths. One foppish fellow seemed completely unaware that his trailing sleeves dangled well below the sign he had concealed his torso behind, completely giving him away. He was greeted by the child he had seen earlier, slightly less grubby now. She solemnly and wordlessly presented him with an enormous bouquet of wildflowers. He recognized some gentian and ragwort, but it seemed more thistle than anything else. He took it gingerly. His thumb came down squarely on a pricker, and he had to convert his wince into a scawl. Prickliness aside, though, he was delighted. He just needed a couple dozen more of these, and he'd be able to hold off, well, maybe not old Erethano could throw at him, but ought to look a good deal better. He'd have to hang them from the ceiling to dry in time. His study was going to look like an herb witch's cottage. He looked from the rapidly wilting flowers he had already spent too much time contemplating and realized everyone was waiting. Of course, he was supposed to do something. What? He handed them back to the child with a muttered instruction to take them up to the castle, and then he clasped his hands casually behind his back and strolled towards the mayor. A pleasant display, he said, nodding at the completed booths that lined the square. Expecting visitors, were you, Mayor Tirwin? It was an impressive little array. The festival was not supposed to officially start until tomorrow, but the tables already near groaned under the first round of food. Scrawny chickens roasted with garlic, basted in garlic, slathered in garlic, encrusted with garlic, garlic chicken on a stick, garlic salt beef on a stick, garlic small unidentified bird on a stick, garlic squirrel on a stick, garlic something claiming to be aquatic, he hoped it wasn't moat squid, on a stick, garlic knots, garlic bread, garlic pretzels, tubs of dried garlic, powdered garlic, garlic sauces, garlic jam, garlic vinegar, garlic cheese, garlic pickles, pickled garlic, garlic pickles and pickled garlic, candied garlic, garlic brittle, apple cakes with roasted garlic that contained rather more garlic than apple, wreaths of garlic, decorative sprays of garlic, knitted garlic bulbs with faces to be played with and inspire the nightmares of children, misshapen hats meant to suggest garlic because naturally one wanted to wear garlic on one's head, garlic-shaped candles he could only pray were not scented with garlic. He hoped they would sell it all and not wish for it in 2 months. Oh, no, replied the mayor, her eyes wider than she'd ever seen them before, rather too wide. Tirwin was good at suppressing emotions, but fairly lousy at pretending them. He hoped the visitors, frozen in their hiding places, couldn't see her face closely. Just our own little festival, Dreadlord. How disappointing, he said. How thick should he lay it on? What would Zaraconar... No. Zaraconar would reduce them all to pain-racked husks without a second glance. Valvina, though, she seemed more the toying type. What would Valvina say here? Well, should a few strangers who won't be missed wander by, I'm always looking for volunteers. He could hear the muffled gasps around the square and tried not to smile. Now, what would get them to buy some damn garlic? He strolled over to the nearest stall and twisted off a chunk of bread and dragged it through what he hoped was garlic butter before popping it into his mouth. The creamy texture dissolved immediately into a shocking sweetness laced with savory garlic. Was that honey? Had they really put garlic in creamed honey? He could hardly spit it out. He would set the poor trembling girl on fire in that case. He swallowed with great effort. The taste clung to his tongue, and he wished desperately for something to wash it away with, but he dared not discover that they'd flavored the mead with garlic as well. Acceptable, he said, dropping the uneaten bread on the ground. You shall live another day. He had to escape before he discovered garlic cookies or beer. There was no way to ask Terwin about the flowers now. The only choice was to retreat. He turned and came face to face with himself. A younger, pimply version at least. The teenager wore robes that could only have been inspired by a not particularly accurate version of his flame robes, and several carefully tended hairs around his mouth that Gav realized with shock were supposed to be a goatee. The boy's hair had not seen the benefit of soap for long enough that a piece of paper rubbed on his head would have come away translucent. Dreadlord Gavarax, the boy said, eyes shining. I just wanted to tell you how much I respect your work. I see, said Gav, and just which work inspired you the most? Probably the time you barbecued that stuck-up bitch who turned down your marriage proposal, the kid said matter-of-factly. He needed a spell now. He needed a spell to allow him to breathe even when his lungs seized up. He had done what? Murdered someone for rejecting him? There had to have been more to it than that. Some extenuating or at least mitigating circumstances that were buried in that thrice damned jar on Sarah Konar's end table. But what if there weren't? I have had cause to regret that action as hasty, he said carefully. No, it was amazing, gushed the kid. She got what was coming to her. As do we all, I am afraid, he said, edging around his worshipper. The kid seemed oblivious to the potential layers of meaning there. How did you get where you are today? The kid begged. Well, how indeed? You don't want to be like me. Of course I do, he insisted, running a nervous hand through his greasy hair. They all do, but I'm the one with the balls to say it. He should discourage him. For a moment, Gav envisioned saying one of the devastatingly insightful comment that would cause this overgrown child to grow up, learn compassion, and rethink all his life choices. The only problem was he had no idea what that comment might be. Wow, I did a thing to my hair, didn't I? I'm just gonna... Okay. It's not better, but it's not worse. It is better. What that comment might be. That devastatingly insightful comment to fix this kid. He could only guess, but he had the sinking feeling that by this stage, the answer was no. All he wanted to do was flee. Instead, he beckoned. The kid took a nervous step forward. Gav leaned in. In a whisper, pitched to carry across the square, he gave the kid the only advice he could think of in the heat of the moment. Garlic. Garlic? The kid stared in confusion. Gav nodded sagely. Garlic. The amount of magical power concentrated in garlic is unfathomable. Why do you think I have commanded them to grow so much of it? Garlic. The kid stepped back, eyes wide, drinking in the square and its profusion of garlic-related amenities in a new light. Conveniently, this took him out of Gav's path. Gav wasn't going to waste the opportunity. He swept past them and back towards the castle. Once he was inside, though, he couldn't figure out where to go. He couldn't face Alicia like this. What was he going to do? Tell a young woman he thought he was brave, who thought Tell a young woman who thought... No, I'm going to try. Tell a young woman who he thought was brave and brilliant, even though she wasn't as pretty as he'd initially thought, that he had previously killed someone for rejecting his advances? Was he expecting her to feel sorry for him? Boo-hoo, he was even more vile than he thought he was, and self-pitying to boot. He went where his feet took him, and ended up in the tiny kitchen garden. His memory, always so helpful, supplied him with the names and uses of most of the plants, and no idea why he'd chosen them. 2 rows contained normal kitchen garden things. Rosemary and marjoram. Marjoram? I don't know how to say that plant name. Marjoram. And withered trellises of bean plants, long since stripped of their summer bounty. One contained nothing but poisons, growing innocently side by side with the herbs. He hoped Orla could remember the difference. The last 2 rows held stranger plants, spell components for spells he had no memory of casting. Wolfsbane and Death May Come and Arrow Tears and Mandrake. Oh! Orla stood up from where she had been crouching nearby. She nearly spilt her basket of herbs. Master need help? Gav didn't need to pretend to glower. I don't want to talk about it. That was a lie. He desperately wanted to talk about it, but he had no idea how to get started, and he couldn't bring himself to start things himself. He had the childish wish that she would beg him to talk to her so that he would have an excuse. She scurried backwards, already obeying his command. He felt a flash of relief and disappointment and betrayal. Why hadn't she asked? That was fine. He didn't want to tell her. He didn't need to explain himself to the help any more than he wanted to show any more weakness in front of the princess. They already knew too much of his pathetic psyche. He didn't need to share any more. It was just another chink in the armor. Maybe they'd even laugh at him together later. That's why you couldn't trust women, or anyone. No wonder Gavarax was so alone. Wait, he said. She paused at the door. I do want to talk about it, he said. Why bother hiding? Everyone knew he was a mess. And he was so very tired of pretending. I mean, I don't, but I should. She nodded slowly, unconvinced, but set down her basket and settled back on her haunches to listen. He closed his eyes and reached out to stroke the silver leaves of the arrow tears bush. The edges caught at his fingers, leaving pinpricks of blood. How could he explain this? Do you think there's a point when someone is just irredeemably evil? He started. Master is very evil, she assured him. Masterfully evil. He rubbed his eyes. That's very kind, Orla, but it's not really what I was going for. He tried again. There was a boy down in the village. And Master set him on fire? She supplied when he paused, looking for words. No, I didn't do anything to him other than convince him of the unfathomable power of garlic. Orla looked lost. Garlic? He couldn't blame her. What other foodstuffs can you make so many things out of? He protested. Look, he reminded me of me, or I think maybe the me that I used to be. All rage and bravado and contempt, only less patience, I think. Whatever I was like, I must have had some grit, or I wouldn't have been able to learn anything at all. This one's not looking to embark on a decades-long study. He's looking for a secret cheat because he thinks he's special and the hard work is beneath him. There's no secret way to instant power, but he'd rather waste his time searching than actually work. Besides, we really need to sell the garlic. I'm going to pause. We're in the middle of a conversation. I'm not going to pause. I want to turn up my kiln, but we'll do that. Besides, we really need to sell the garlic. So, set on fire after he buy garlic? Orla tried to puzzle it out. No, he blew out a breath. Even if he'd been talking to a human, they wouldn't have followed him. He wasn't making any sense. He let the drop of blood that was oozing down his finger drop into the open mouth of a mouse catcher. The bright green teeth of the plant, like a fly trap but bigger, snapped around the offering. The other mouths uncurled, searching blindly for more. He tried to start a third time. I have done bad things, Orla. Terrible things. Unforgivable things. And I look back and I can't even understand how I could have done something like that. But the worst of it was, he could imagine it, the pain and embarrassment of being rejected and the rage that would follow, the sudden desperate need to make it go away, to show her, to wipe away any trace of condescension off her face, whether it had been there or not, to show everyone the consequences of refusing to give him what he wanted to deserve, but he knew in his heart that he didn't. He understood it, and he hated himself for understanding. How do there's no way to come back from what I've done in the past. It doesn't matter who I want to be now, he said out loud, voicing what he'd known for days now. Most of his remembered life, actually. His shoulders slumped even further, which he hadn't thought possible. One of the mouse capture traps snapped on the toe of his boot, and he let it. Orla didn't look at him, and he couldn't really blame her for that either. She poked a bit at the plants at her feet, tugging up a weed and tossing it behind her. Finally, she answered, "Matter to who?" "To anyone," he said, standing in the middle of his garden of death. A friendly tendril of cuttlewort, drawn by his heat, curled around his finger. He stroked the fuzzy leaves. At least the plant liked him. No one else was going to. Evil isn't math, right? It's not like I can do some magic number of good deeds that will somehow balance out the bad things. I can't unhurt the people that I hurt, even if I try to change the way I act now. Orla kept poking at the weeds, her face opaque. He couldn't even tell if she was too cautious to show her feelings or too simple to follow his argument, or just that he was too bad at reading goblin faces to understand her. If being good now isn't enough to make up for the person I used to be, what point is there? No one will trust me. No one should trust me. He jerked his hand harder than he meant to, and the tendril snapped in half. The remaining stub curled back on itself. He stared at the broken leaf in his hand. Why it matter? He could rush the broken stem into water and it would last a few more days. It was still doomed. What was the point? He threw it away angrily. Have you ever wanted to be someone else? Someone you can't be? Orla not want to be a goblin, she said thoughtfully, but goblin not great to be. No, let me try that again. Orla not want to not be goblin, she said thoughtfully, but goblin not great to be. His face flushed hot. He had lectured Alicia not considering the goblins to be real people, and here he was, treating Orla like she existed solely to listen to his monologuing. Of course she wanted something she couldn't have. No one would ever trust a goblin with that cookbook of hers. No one cares what do, just what look like, Orla explained. Heroes, good because wear white and people like. Villains, bad because wear black and ugly. Heroes kill goblin children, everybody cheer. Villains give home to goblin, everybody hiss. Goblins can serve evil master and sometimes safe in castle walls, or can live in stinky swamp and still get killed by baby heroes. So goblins evil? He swallowed. I don't think goblins are evil. Orla not think goblins are evil, she shrugged. Some people disagree. But why even bother trying to be good if people will always think you're bad anyway? What does it matter? You said it yourself. If you're going to be thought of as bad, The ones everyone decided are heroes are just going to ride right over you anyway. At least if you lean into the evil, you get to have a little power. Orla looked at him directly. He had the sinking feeling that the snaggle-toothed goblin with a speech impediment was disappointed in him. Say again, matter to who? To people? To one person? To you? To anyone. Can't please anyone. Will never prove to anyone you are not evil. They never forgive. Maybe you not deserve them to forgive. You still want to do evil tomorrow? Just because they expect? Even if you don't want to do evil? They choose, not you? He was getting better at reading her facial expressions, he thought, because he thought maybe what he saw there was contempt. The kitchen door opened and Throck peered out. Guests here! And just like that, they were out of time.